Good evening, everyone. At this time, I'll call to order the business meeting here on January 27th, 2025 for the Faribault Public Schools School Board. In our call to order, Ms. Steves, will you determine if we have a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there is.
Please, would you everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Agenda item number 2 is approval of the agenda, and I just want to point out something to board members here that if you'll notice under 3C, we have the audit report, the presentation, and then 3D, we're going to take and have an action item for to consider the approval of the audit at that time for time's sake there. So it's not going to be in the business piece, but we're moving that up to 3D will be consider approval of the audit. So with that information, I'll have is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item number 3, recognition, awards, and presentation. 3A, present school emergency management certificates. And our presenter is HSEM. So if you... Welcome. You'd just like to introduce yourselves and
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, good evening. We are from the Minnesota School Safety Center, which is part of the Department of Public Safety, and what you refer to, HSCM, is Homeland Security and Emergency Management. We are a free resource, non-regulatory resource to all K-12 schools in Minnesota to help them with all hazard emergency preparedness planning. And so that's why we're here today. We want to present Mike Bearding and Thomas Katra their school-based emergency management certificates. They took part in a program. It was, it's pretty intense and it takes quite a commitment. They spent 2 days with us with in-person learning, along with about 26 other colleagues, school professionals, working in school emergency preparedness. They spent 2 days with us in person. They took three online FEMA courses, which was about 12 hours. And in addition to that, they also were asked to do 2 elective courses having to do with school emergency preparedness. And they are 2 of 57 people in the state who have accomplished this goal. So we would like to present them with their certificates. Okay, we'll let Jenny do this.
Sure. All right, Michael? I don't know if there's a picture or...
Did that,
Do you want a picture of the board or just?
I think we can do... No, we can do it in front of the board table, sure.
Great. Thomas? I'll have you guys step in the middle there. That's yours. Awesome. Okay. Sure. Oh,
I think just in closing, we just want to commend them and your district's willingness and participation in our program. Connie and I have been with the School Safety Center since 2017, and this coursework that they just completed comes from a place where we know that there's multiple different disciplines within your school community that are really focused on student safety and security. And so this course is really designed to really round out your overall preparedness as a district and thinking about how there's so many cogs in that wheel, and so we really want to thank you for allowing them the time and giving them the empowerment to come spend that time with us, and then they can bring the things that they learn back to your district as a whole. So we really would just like to thank you, and thanks for having us come and present them with their certifications at your meeting.
So thank you
Sure.
for coming. But just a quick question. Did you say they are 2 out of 57 in the entire state of Minnesota to receive this?
Correct. We began this program, Connie, what year was that? It was after COVID, maybe 2023 was maybe the first year. And it's kind of been slowly spreading throughout. And so as of today, there are 59 different school officials throughout the state of Minnesota that have completed this work. So that's kudos to them and their hard work, and kudos to you for allowing them the opportunity to participate.
Outstanding. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you.
Any other board members have any?
Questions for us? Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming down.
3B, school board recognition. So at this time, I'm going to go around the front here, but I'd like Mr. Richard Olson, if you'd come forward, please.
Hi, Richard.
So, Mr. Olson, on behalf of the Faribault Public Schools, the district, the school board, and our community, we'd like to acknowledge and recognize your 16 years of dedication to service on the Faribault School Board. So, congratulations and thank you very much.
Does it come with a new car too, or not?
My budget doesn't allow for that. Thank you very much.
Stick around to the end of the meeting, maybe there will be one.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Second, we also have, this can be a surprise, it shouldn't be a surprise, but we also have recognition for one of our sitting board members, and that's Ms. Linda Boudreau. So if you would come forward, please. We received notification from the Minnesota School Boards Association. I'll wait till she gets up there. He did. That she has successfully completed the MSBA Leadership Development Program, and this achievement reflects her participation in the Leadership Workshop Series, phases 1, 2, 3, and 4. So on behalf of the board and the MSBA, we have a certificate and a letter of appreciation, and thank you for your work. So. Agenda item 3C is our audit report, our presentation. I'm going to ask Ms. Barbie Raisler, our Director of Finance and Operations, come forward, and I'll have her introduce the member of the audit firm who is going to present to us tonight as well. So.
Thank you, Board Chair and board members. Tonight, we are able to finally put this audit to rest. The presentation tonight is going to be from the auditing firm Bergen KDV, and Caroline Stutzman is the person who's been in charge of our audit for the last few years. Not working as closely with Caroline because she's got a different team in the field that works with us directly. And as you may remember, we had a little bit of turnover this year, and so you're receiving this report rather late in the year. But Caroline will go through the presentation and hit the highlights of what's happening this year. Before she does so, I do want to thank the entire business office team and all of those that helped with the audit this year. It was no small task, and I'm just incredibly proud of the team that we have with the business office, who really stepped up, stepped in, and did so much to ensure that our audit went as smoothly as possible, and ensuring that everything was done to the best of everyone's ability. So, and want to thank Bergen KDV for their fantastic work with us and their patience with us as we all went through this process. So I will turn it over to Caroline.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction. Yes, Caroline Stutzman. I'm the partner involved in your audit, have been involved for the last few years. So tonight, I'd like to take a few minutes of your time and go through the results of the most recent audit. As a reminder, the main reason you ask us to work with you is to provide that opinion on your financial statements. That opinion is housed within the independent auditor's report. Also within the independent auditor's report, both management's responsibility as well as our responsibility is outlined. So management's responsibility is for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with GAAP, meaning they determine those numbers. And then our role then is to provide reasonable assurance that those financial statements are free of material misstatement. That's the opinion part. The opinion we're providing is what's called an unmodified opinion, the highest level that you can receive and not a change from previous years, meaning we believe those financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects as of June 30th, 2024. In addition to looking at the numbers, we also conducted our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. That requires us to consider internal control as we go throughout that process. One item that is noted there, and we talked about this with management as well, the internal control item related to lack of segregation of accounting duties. That is a very common item for districts of your size. It is just inherently present with the duties that overlap with the amount of staff that you have. As I mentioned, very, very common. It is at a mid-level finding for you, which does indicate you do have mitigating controls in place that help to reduce that. Another component of the audit, because you spend more than $750,000 worth of federal expenditures, is the audit in accordance with uniform guidance. May be more familiar with the term single audit, that's where this falls. So 2 programs were tested this year in relation to that, Child Nutrition Cluster and Education Stabilization Fund. We did not have any findings related to any of that test work either. And then one final component is in relation to Minnesota legal compliance. The Office of the State Auditor compiles a number of state statutes that we need to inquire about. We had a couple of items that surfaced this year. I don't believe they will be items that continue. They just kind of had to do with circumstances this year. I wasn't going to go through them in great detail. We talked about them with management, unless you had any specific questions about them. With that, we'll dig into the financial analysis. So with general education aid being the largest funding source for you as a school district in the state of Minnesota, we look at the 2 main drivers of that calculation, which is the formula allowance and pupil units. Much more complex, but 2 main drivers. And so we start here with formula allowance, showing the trend where it has been, what we know currently based on legislature, but focusing on that 2024 line and the 4% increase that was received this year. Then next we look at pupil units, and we begin with your resident ADMs. So these are only the students living within your district. And for 2024, resident ADMs did decrease in total by about 57. And when you look at the grade levels as they're presented there, all did decrease with the exception of elementary, which increased as they're presented this way. Then if you apply the weighting factors that are at the top of this slide, as well as take into consideration open enrollment, you arrive at total pupil units served. And this is the amount that you're paid off of from the state. So that top line there follows suit with what we just looked at for residents, but it has the weighting factors applied to it. So similar story, seeing the decrease there. And then the next 2 lines, residents going elsewhere and non-residents coming in, that's that impact of open enrollment. So for 2024, that's a loss of about 1,200 compared to a loss of just under 1,100 in 2023. So at the end of the day, total pupil units served decreased by right around 200 for the year. We also include adjusted ADM there. I believe that is a key way that these numbers are communicated to you as a board, so we wanted to show that information for you as well. Here we see that information just presented in percentage format, so showing the decline over the 5 years that are presented. And then next we look at general fund sources of revenues. So in total, general fund revenues increased by 8%. When we look at the various components of that, state sources increased most significantly. A few different factors came into play there. The formula allowance that we already touched on is one of those. That was slightly offset by the pupil units, but then special education was also a component in that, just based on aid and needs of your kiddos as well. And then there were some new funding formulas as well that came through. Local property taxes increased with an increase in the levy. And then the other revenue, this is where federal dollars are housed. And so that category decreased as a result of the COVID dollars and kind of starting to get those towards the end of the life there. This slide looks at revenues from a per ADM served standpoint. It also gives you the ability then to compare to some state average information. But for starters, in 2024, we see that revenues per ADM did increase for the year. Reasons for that have to do with the fact that revenues increased by the 8%, and then the pupil units that we talked about, or the ADM served, decreased. So just kind of stretching that out, or the mechanics of that calculation. Then if we go back to 2023, that's where we can compare to some state average information. And you see a similar story as to what has been presented in previous years. The district is above state average, but we always talk about that in the fact that it isn't always apples to apples when you're comparing one district to another. This is an average, and some of the things that can change that information from one district to another depend on the demographics and the needs of your kiddos. So items like compensatory aid, federal dollars, special education, all of those things can vary based on the needs that you have. And we begin with revenue because typically you're going to be spending in accordance with those revenue streams and within your means. So when we look at expenditures here, per ADM served, you see a similar story, that in 2023 above state average, and that increase for 2024. We have general fund expenditures presented here in a pie chart format, comparing 2024 to 2023. When we look at this information, first for 2024, you see capital outlay and pupil support services increased. A greater piece of the pie went there. Another piece that we can do is compare 2023 information with state average information. So a couple of items just to touch on briefly. Special education for a state average is 19%, so showing the need that you have here within your district. Additionally, district and school administration is 5% on the state average, and district support services is 4% on the state average. So just some additional information for you there. Here we have a general fund budget to actual snapshot. The first column is the original budget that was approved, anticipating fund balance would increase by right around 1.5 million. After some amendments to the budget, the final budget is included in that second column, anticipating fund balance would increase 970,000-ish. And actual results are in that third column, showing the increase in fund balance of 2.9 million. The variance is in the far right column. And if we go to total revenues to start, and all the way over to that far right column, we see that total revenues were under budget. If we apply a percentage to that, it's 0.2%, so very close considering the complexity of the funding in the state of Minnesota. So congratulations there. On the expenditure side of things, if we follow the chart down, and again over to that far right column, total expenditures were under budget. Again, if we apply a percentage to that, 3.2% under budget. And some of the fluctuations that you see there really have to do with changes in staffing needs as the year went on. Here we bring the general fund all together. We've touched on revenues and expenditures already, as well as that change in fund balance. And here we see the ending fund balance, which is just under 10.9 million. All of the components of that fund balance are listed at the bottom. Start out with a few items that are labeled non-spendable. So these are for items where, if you think about it, the dollars have left the building. You can't use them for future operations, so that they're segregated into their own category. And then there are a number of restricted components. So these are all of those components where you need to spend the money in accordance with how it was received. So all those state mandated funding sources. Those components altogether increased by $475,000. That leaves us with the unassigned fund balance, which is what is available for future operations that isn't identified above. That balance increased by just under $2.4 million for the year. That is also the balance that correlates to your fund balance policy. And your fund balance policy indicates that you would have a target of a minimum of 9.5% of the annual budgeted expenditures. You are in compliance with the policy that you've established for yourselves. This slide looks at fund balance in yet another way. This is unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of unrestricted expenditures, slightly different than what we looked at on the previous page. It is the SOD calculation. It again gives us the ability to compare to some state average information, so showing where the district has been in previous years, as well as the increase for 2024. The last two slides take a look at your special revenue funds, your food service and community service funds. So we start here with food service, showing an increase in activity, both in revenues and expenditures, which has been a really common theme as I've talked through districts throughout the state. With the change in funding source this year, again, there's been a lot of change in this fund over the last few years, but with the free meal program coming through the state, that is a component of it, as well as your increased need and after-school programs from the federal revenue side of things, and then the related expenditures that follow with that. So at the end of the day, fund balance did increase and ended the year at $2.1 million. And then we have community service fund. So increased activity here as well. There was increased programming as well as grant activity this year in this fund. So the fund ended up increasing right around $200,000 and ended the year at $1.1 million. All of the components of fund balance in this fund are positive. That is not something we always are able to sit in front of you or stand in front of you and say. At all districts, that isn't always the case. So great job there as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Board members. Ms. Boudreau.
Chair, I'm not sure I have a comment, but I have some observations.
Sure.
Starting on page 15, you highlighted that our special education consists of 23% of our general fund expenditures. The statewide average is 19%. That's kind of a revelation to me. As well as you mentioned, Caroline, meaning you, Ms. Sussman, the district and school administration costs are at 4%, whereas the state average is 5%. So our administrative expenditures are lower than the statewide average. That was a significant issue. A positive thing, maybe, as well as the community service fund. Our community service fund, our revenues increased $883,000 in '24, and that was due to the increased participation in our programs. And that is due to the work of Zach Pruitt, who I think we should mention that, his efforts and some of our new programming. That was a significant issue. There's more, but I'm not sure if I'll remember where it was. By the way, thank you for coming and presenting that. There's a lot of information here, and that's why I thought it
Absolutely.
was important to just highlight some of those that weren't maybe caught,
Absolutely.
don't always hear exactly what you're saying, so I'm
Yep.
highlighting.
Yeah, there's a lot that.
Is
that
there
I
another
went through, yeah.
highlight that maybe I missed? Oh, I know what it was. Our fund balance for our food service fund is quite large. Fortunately, this year, and it's all has to be spent in a certain way, fortunately, this year, with our restructuring, we are going to be looking at, I should let Barbie share this. We're looking at, some changes. We're trying to get one of our kitchens working so we can use some of that fund for that, as well as new lunch tables. This year only, we can spend it on lunch tables, right? And Barbie, add some things if you like, but I think it's important to see some of the positives that have come from the information we've gleaned from your audit. Thank you for auditing us, and we do the best we can, and we're excited to have Barbie take the reins. She's doing a great job.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Moore?
Oh, yes, thank you for coming up here. I just have just some clarification on page 16 for the communication letter. They talk about the revenues, the local property taxes, local and county revenues, revenues from state and federal sources, and sales of other conversions of assets. I'm assuming like if we sell land or something, or if we sell a building. But the rest of them, they come from, I'm assuming, sources of income are from the taxes. Is that correct? This is on page 16 of the communication letter.
Is it the sources of revenue page?
Yes.
Is that what's at the title?
Let's see, it was page 16, might be it, on the
Oh,
communications pages. I think it may have been on this page, on the financial statement too, but it said the basic sources of revenues are local property taxes, county revenue, state sources, and federal sources.
Yep,
So
so-
I'm assuming those are from taxes, correct?
I'm thinking it's this.
It says
page.
sales and other conversions of assets too, but
Yep,
not
so-
counting that one.
Yeah, so local property taxes is one category, state
Yep.
sources is another, and then everything else is in the other one. So,
Yeah, this is in communication letter. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
so your federal sources go in there, other local and county, which is interest revenue is also in that component.
Yes, interest revenue too, yes.
That is a large portion, and then
Uh-huh.
your fees that you collect from, activities and things like that are also within there. And then, yeah, sales and other, that's usually more minimal. But the largest portions of that piece would be the federal and then the other local and county.
State, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And this is in the basic financial statement. Just for, as I said, I'm a sociologist and not an accountant, and I did read this, but if somebody's looking through this, I see that they, from the food service and community service, they change from major to non-major. Could you just explain that to the,
Yeah, so
I know you explained it in here, but I think
not a
it should
problem.
be.
So
Thank you.
reporting requirements, there is a calculation that happens that 10% of your assets, liabilities, revenues or expenditures cumulatively, if a fund is 10% or more, it is required to be a major fund. Those funds did not meet that requirement, so they
So now
are
they're-
allowed to be moved to the back. There's always the option to still present them up at the front. That does lower the threshold for our work, honestly, because we have to, our opinions are every major fund or non-major accumulation. So, yeah, the decision was made to move those to the back because they didn't require, or they weren't required to be presented
Thank you.
separately.
And the one other thing from the communication letter, from what I am seeing in this audit, you did review the district, whether the district was in compliance with the government rules or obligations, especially pertaining to the appropriate accounting procedures, correct? Yeah, and I guess for myself, I thought it was more of an all-encompassing. I think the second paragraph, it says, our consideration of internal control was for the limited purpose described in the preceding paragraph and was not designed to identify all deficiencies in internal control. So I guess that surprised me. So why not?
So that would involve us being present even longer. The requirements are for reasonable, not absolute assurance from the opinion standpoint, meaning we aren't checking every transaction that goes through
Thorough.
the
So
district.
you
We're
kinda take a
checking, we're
random
spot checking, we're
sample.
sampling, we're looking at recalculating, things like that, because we would pester them a lot more if
Yeah.
that were the case. And the same goes with internal control. We aren't required to provide an opinion on the internal control, just consider it as we go throughout our process. So that's also what that's getting at, that something could still,
Is it a random process that you go through, like the transactions, you don't go through them all, but is it a random
yes,
selection?
yep, or it's a recalculation of your large
Okay.
items.
Because one of the things I am just hesitant to put my stamp of approval on something that could be missed, and I don't know if it come back at us or not, so that's my only concern about
Yeah,
that. So,
that's standard
Okay.
language requirement for the audit
you.
practice. Mhm.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Wolf?
Ms. Stutzman, thank you. I know you've been here the last couple of years, so appreciate you and your firm's efforts. Just a couple questions for you, bigger picture, if you will. Roughly how many districts in Minnesota does Bergen KDV audit?
We're in that 75 range, I would say, 75 to 100.
And of those 75 to 100, is this the same type of audit, just following up
Yes.
on Ms. Moore's
Yes,
questions or comments? This is the same type of audit
Yep.
you do for all of those
it
districts?
is. Yep, that's what
Perfect.
standards require of us to do, and we go through the same
Thank you.
process. for each.
Do you have any guesstimate of those 75 to 100, how many of those districts get an unmodified opinion from you in the last year?
They all do.
They all do.
They all do.
Okay, thank you. So, do you have any estimate how many of those 75 to 100 have the budget line for administration costs at below the state average?
That estimate off the top of my head.
Okay. We get accused of a lot of things, and overspending in administration is often one of those because that's an easy target. And this is my 12th year on the board, probably my 11th. No, that's wrong. I'm sorry. I'm in my 11th year. So 10 years of audits, and I believe every year that I've been on this board, this district has spent less than the state average. I think Bergen KDV, I think this is your third year
Third or
with us?
fourth.
Third or fourth?
One or-
Okay, and I
somewhere in there.
believe every year that you've done our audit, we've been below. So, thank you. And then
Yep.
this year, we're reviewing this about a month later than normal years. Should we expect this going forward, or should we anticipate something by the end of the calendar year going forward?
Yes, going forward, I completely expect that it will go back to
Okay,
the compliance of that, yes.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome.
Once again, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions, board members? So from my chair here, so the bottom line is, from your opinion, and I'll just basically clean headlines in the paper, this is a clean audit, in your opinion?
Correct.
Again, once again, we're very good.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so with that, we'll move to agenda item 3D, which is consider approval of the audit. And again, I think we jumped ahead a little bit here, but we do have a financial statement and communications letter. Let's have a motion for approval of the audit, please.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf, and do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. I'll give it to Dr. Robichaud. And so for discussion, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Barbie Raisler, in case you have anything you would like to add with the financial statement or communications letter, anything like that.
No, I think the review that Caroline provided us with the information that's included in both the financial statement and the communications letter does speak to the audit as a whole. I do want to, again, commend everyone that was involved with the audit. Just so pleased with the entire team that worked on it, and knowing that this was an unusual year. We did have 3 findings that should not happen again, and God willing, they won't happen again. But we do have to be cognizant that we will most likely get the lack of segregation of duties finding again, which is very common in our state. Other than that, I think it was I think that the outcome of the audit was very, very positive, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions that anyone has regarding that.
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Moore.
I just would like to know, how confident are you of your findings?
How confident am I?
Well, both of you, yeah, because I am a little concerned about putting my stamp of approval on something that's,
Oh,
you know,
so the
maybe I'm looking from a quantitative aspect. more
Sure,
so than a
so the
qualitative.
findings that we have, one was a form not presented in the, at the correct time frame. One was that we were late with our audit, and the other was a collateral issue that we had with our bank that, because they looked on a particular day, that's that random look.
No, that's, I was just asking, how confident are you? of
Oh, I'm
that?
confident in,
You know,
yeah,
because
in correcting our findings, yes.
I'd like to be 100%, you know, with it.
Yes, yes.
Because I guess I was more concerned with the communications letter than anything. So.
Oh,
But I thank you for doing that.
absolutely, absolutely.
Dr. Robichaud.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a response. I'm totally confident going through audits for years, not only as a board member, but as a superintendent, that any firm that is charged with that kind of responsibility is certainly going to be, I know you do sampling, but nonetheless, those samplings are critical to really get a good picture of what's going on. And so I'm very confident that your audit is very accurate and very definitely describing where the district is financially. The other thing is, the separation of responsibilities. I would think that you'd probably find that same thing in St. Paul, Minneapolis. That it is not an unusual statement, and I know from an audit standpoint, you'd like to have 10 different people, balances and checks. That's just not possible. It's not an indictment on what we're doing in this district. It in fact is just a comment that, yeah, it would be nice if we had more staff doing it, but it's not that we are not fulfilling our obligation to do prudent processes in our finances, that there's nothing in there. So I'm very confident in what you have stated about the financial condition of our district.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. Any further discussion, board members? Last call for discussion. We do have a motion and a second for approval of the audit. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you very much for your presentation and your time. Thank you. Agenda item 3E is Elevate the Day Today at Roosevelt. Ms. Ashley Benhart, principal, and her cohort. And I have to say that is the first agenda item I've ever seen that says Elevate. That's like, let's go.
Hey.
So
We're excited about it.
great. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, I am Ashley Benhart, principal at Roosevelt. And with me, I have Lori Kelly, the instructional coach, and Taylor Reese, dean of students, as well as PBIS coach. All right, before we begin today, the ultimate purpose of this presentation is to acknowledge and celebrate the successes. So with this chapter of Roosevelt coming to a close, we wanted to take this opportunity to honor and celebrate those successes that have happened in the past and are currently happening this year as well at Roosevelt Elementary. So before we dive into the presentation, we do have some tools to help us celebrate these successes. So Taylor, Lori, and I will be coming around with some tools to help us be successful in the celebration.
Is this an audience participation?
100%.
You should be lucky I commandeered some of the things they wanted to bring in before they got them in here. Dr. O'Connor says that.
Who? Oh, are you at St. Concordia? I'm going to have coffee with them next week. So.
2 hands.
As a former teacher, put it down until you're told to pick it up.
All right.
We always need joy. Love it. Okay, good.
We don't try to spread germs.
Oops. You get to keep that.
I'm good with it.
We're tough. We can handle
All
it.
right, I'll have
Kids.
one of these.
Kids. I have kids.
Save it for New Year's next year.
In the essence of all the change around here, we just need a reminder to have some joy once in a while and to celebrate those successes. So, as we continue, the vehicle that we will be using today to celebrate those successes is our site improvement plan. The site improvement plan truly hones in and provides that intentionality behind what we do on a day-to-day basis. The Roosevelt Site Improvement Plan has three main areas. We have a literacy goal, a math goal, and a PBIS goal. Lori and Taylor will kind of hone in on to what specifics those look like. In years past, we had a site team. A site team is kind of our leadership team that dives into those action steps to make sure those goals are happening. This year, we decided to break that one site team up into three different committees that support the site improvement plan. So we have a literacy committee, a math committee, and a PBIS committee, and that in itself has been very successful. We meet about every other week, and we have 30-minute meetings. We decide on one action step. We go out in those 2 weeks, implement the action step, and then come back and reflect on what worked, what didn't, and move forward that way. So as we go through this presentation, we will be celebrating successes, and we're going to practice with Elevate, just so that you know we're ready to go. Our word this year at Roosevelt is Elevate. We chose this word because students came in at a higher level than they ever have in years past. 3, 2, 1. All right, we're learning. Very good, very good. So anytime you want or see a celebration that needs to happen, please do so in your own way. We all celebrate in our own way. It can be obnoxious, it can be subtle, whatever works for you. But truly the whole point of this is to celebrate and honor those successes. And we will be doing so again with our site improvement plan. So I will turn it over to Lori.
All right. We could get the next slide. There we go. So I have the pleasure of talking about our literacy goal. This year, our literacy goal for our K-2 students is that 80% of them will land in the typical and aggressive growth category on our FastBridge assessments. And what that means is FastBridge breaks the growth categories down into 4 parts. The first one is aggressive, then it goes into typical, then moderate, then flat. We want to be in those top 2 categories to close the gap. And as you can see, we want to be at that 80%. Last year, our K-2 students were in about 87%. So we want to be at that 80% or more, which is pretty reasonable. And we're well on our way to that this year. Our students in grades 3 through 5, we decided we want them to increase in those typical and aggressive growth categories by 6%. Last year, we were at about 66, and this year our goal is 72. Thank you. This is fun. As you can see at the top there, we put the word maintain, and that is for a reason. We really want to maintain this aggressive growth because as you can see down on the bottom, we have our MCA scores from Roosevelt from the past 4 years, and we really have grown at a steady rate, and we want to keep that up. All right, we can go on to the next slide. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to maintain at these rates? How are we going to grow? So our literacy committee has carried out some action steps. The first one has been very beneficial. Our teachers have been making more positive phone calls home. They have coaching with myself, which really emphasizes teacher choice to be sure that they are interested in what they want to work on. They have ongoing professional development related to our New Bridge to Read curriculum. Oftentimes, a new curriculum comes in and we have a PD for 1 to 2 times at the beginning of the year. Our literacy committee affords itself to be able to provide PD across the year as problems come up. It's been so beneficial. We have another one tomorrow. We are also, as you know, we are fulfilling our letters training on Falcon Days for that new READ Act. And so that's also been beneficial that we talk about all the new learning from our Falcon Day right into our literacy committee meeting or sometimes even on the Falcon Day itself. So that is how we plan on maintaining and elevate to our next goal. So let's take a look here at our Bridge to Read curriculum. You might have been hearing about this. It is systematic phonics instruction, and that's the difference from years past. Let's look at one of our fabulous second grade teachers, Mrs. Erin Knudsen, and we're just going to watch a little 1-minute clip on what this looks like in the classroom.
Voiced or unvoiced? Unvoiced. T-H mother. Voiced or unvoiced? Voiced. Voiced. We hear our voice boxes going, ooh, you can feel it. P-H phone. I-N-D. Kind. It does not follow the rules. We have the long sound. I-L-D. Usually found where? In the middle.
All right, you can stop right there. Thank you. So the main difference of this is the teachers are taking their time in grades K through 3 to really break down each phonemic awareness and phonics instruction element. So you can see her there saying the AI, all the phonics skills, reviewing them day after day so they really get in the students' long-term memory. And you can see she's saying voiced, unvoiced. We know that phonics instruction now is really more into articulation, what your voice is doing. So it's such a great addition, and the teachers have really done such a great job this year taking to it and being so positive about it. Something teachers do really, really well at Roosevelt is they track how the students are doing. We don't wait until fast testing season happens 3 times a year. We use our mastery checks with Bridge to Read and other assessments to say, we know how they're going to do before they get into that. We use this information in our PLCs and our literacy committee to talk. If we're having a problem, we talk to one another and problem solve it right away so we can address the issue immediately. All right, I'm excited. So math goal this year is 80% of our students in all grades K through 5 are going to reach those 2 top levels. Remember again, we want them to be in typical aggressive. We don't want moderate or flat, which is decreasing or just flatlining. We just can't have that to close the gap. So last year we were right around the 70s range for students in that typical and aggressive growth area. Now we want to hit 80. The reason why we want, and you can see we want to maintain this growth because this past few years we have seen some increases in our math scores as well on the MCAs. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to maintain and elevate? Because it's so hard to maintain. But what we want to do as a math committee and what we're doing this year is, again, those positive phone calls home to families, coaching with teacher choice. This year, I'm so pleased that I get to go into the math area. For my past 8 years as a coach, I've only been able to really dabble, well, I call it dabbling, go into reading. Now I get to have any teacher choice that they want, any subject. We are exploring the new math standards, which are implemented in the next few years, and they're going to be on our next MCAs. So that's great. We're getting into it. Something really great this year that we're finally getting to is the vertical alignment of standards in our curriculum, and I'll show you a picture of that in the next slides. Differentiating is tough in math, so we're really digging in and talking about that. Vocabulary instruction, which I'll show you on a following slide as well. Spiral, and of course, we are data-driven in math. We want to know how we're doing weekly or monthly. Here's that example of vertical alignment that I was talking about. Here we have every single grade level and all the words that are used in our My Math curriculum. So I've taken every word written in the column and we found the gaps. So if they have some MCA words that are required for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade and our curriculum is not addressing them, I've highlighted them and we're trying to figure out ways that we can fill it in. Here's what that looks like as well, besides that vertical alignment. We know that kids can't solve the math problems if they don't know the vocabulary words that are in the problems to begin with. So we're addressing that this year with our intentional vocabulary instruction as students have Students have their own cards that come with the curriculum. A new addition this year is teacher cards in their classroom. So they're really intentionally teaching these daily. And you can see an example of that right there. All grades have this. These are just from our 4th and 5th grade classrooms. They are doing an amazing job really taking this on. All right.
This is ridiculous. So Roosevelt PBIS, as a lot of the other schools in our district are doing right now, we are starting PBIS just this school year. And we made our site goal based around the TFI, which is the Tiered Fidelity Inventory. And really what it does, it just is assessing where we're at in our PBIS journey. Are we implementing the things necessary? And then it gives us next steps for beyond that. So we came into it with our initial score of 37%, and we've already hit our goal, which was supposed to be 46%, but we're at 50% as of our second time. Our school's done a really great job of really embracing the PBIS change, and we also had some systems last year that were very PBIS-ish. So that helped the transition a lot, and it really made it much smoother than I think other schools probably have when it's first introduced. This is what we did to get to that point. So we obviously have our PBIS team, awesome people up in the right corner there, filled with staff members of total different backgrounds. We have teachers, paras, a couple family members, our school psych. So it's a wide variety of people in there. Oh, our social worker too. She'd be so angry if I didn't include that. Can we cheer for them? Thank you. And then we make sure that our SOAR expectations are posted all around the building, just making sure that everyone is aware of what those expectations are. We've introduced a lot of fun ways to teach behavior and then reinforce that behavior. So some of our SOAR tickets, SOAR assemblies, Students of the Month programs, monthly specialist awards, weekly golden trays. Really all these things just reinforce the behavior that we want to see in different areas. And that leads me to, I'm so sad that this video doesn't work. So we have on the left side there pictures from one of our assemblies, and on the right side those are the various classroom awards that students can get. They get a golden tambourine for music, golden bowling pins for Phi-Ed. We have our golden trays for the cafeteria, and these classes earn these classroom awards based on following expectations in that area. The video that you all will have to watch at some point, and I just have to tell you, now I hope this doesn't change your opinion on Mrs. Benhart here, but she is a Packers fan. And so fortunately, she was out on maternity leave to start the school year. And at that point, I say it's fortunate because I got to bring a little version of the skull chant to our SOAR assemblies. So it's actually a SOAR chant. And now I get to watch Mrs. Benhart once a month do these skull chants. So it's been a lot of fun.
It hurts my soul very deeply. But PBIS. All right, oops. So to conclude, again, just wanted to take this opportunity to celebrate the successes happening. Data is important. It's absolutely imperative to the success of a school. The people are as well. And I would say without a doubt that these are amazing people at the building. They work hard each and every day. And I am just so proud of their coaching mindset, how far we've come, even in the past 2 years that I've been here. Their coachability, their growth mindset, and just their ability to show up for students day in and day out and put in the work to make this success happen. So I wanted to conclude this presentation with celebrating each and every staff member at Roosevelt. What questions do you have?
Board members.
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Moore.
Yeah, I visited Roosevelt a couple times this year, and I really have to say, with that MCA score, the math went up 11 percentage points, and that was really, I did notice that, and I think we should recognize that. And I think that blew that 95% confidence level. I know that was, you went up in reading a little bit, got to work on science a little bit. But one of the things, too, that I noticed was really impressed with the buddy system that they have there, where the older students, they assist the younger students with maybe math or whatever it is. And I've witnessed that twice, and I really did appreciate that. And I think that's a really good thing, because I think when I looked at it, the students were enjoying each other, but yet they were learning. So learning doesn't have to be drudgery. So Yeah, thank you.
And I'd like to shout out our fifth grade teachers for that too. They put a lot of time and effort into the buddy system. The SOAR Council is what we call it. So it's been a really positive addition to our school, and I think that it's been well received from everyone in there.
Oh, one more thing I forgot. I really am very happy about the fact that you're using systematic phonics. I think we needed to do that, and I think that will also bring up the scores, because that was very important. Systematic phonics. We need to do that. Thank you.
Anyone else, board members?
So just as a parent, those positive calls back, they don't just mean something for the kids, they mean a lot to families. So I'm really, really impressed that you're doing that. And Mr. Benty, Mr. Bellingham, you could take some tips on how to run a school board meeting. I'm just going to go ahead and keep this.
Anyone else, board members?
Mr. Chair, can I ask just a couple questions?
Mr. Wolf, go ahead.
Can you go back to slide 4, the literacy goal? I think you said that the top bullet point, are we at like 70 some or 80 some % today?
That was last year. So last year we finished out the year at 87.
That's not on here though, correct? Or am I missing it?
No,
Okay, okay.
This is our goal for this year.
Okay.
I'm saying how we finished out last year was 87 for grades K.
Thank you. And then you did math and it's not on there either. I think you just mentioned a number. Can you go to slide 13, the PBIS TFI results? Now, I'm not very smart, so can you please educate me on, you said our goal was, I think, to get to 46%. We're at 50%. What does this mean?
Yeah, if you go back to the slide before this, it lays out what the TFI is. And like I said, it basically is assessing what parts of PBIS system we have implemented and how well we've implemented it within our building. So it's essentially just a little checklist that we do at PBIS training that says, yes, we have this, no, we don't have this. Most schools come into this starting at about 23%. So we started higher than probably your average school that's starting PBIS would, which is why we set it at what we felt was a pretty lofty goal. Turns out we were wrong. But it's also because we moved a lot faster than I think we had fully anticipated. You kind of move at the pace of what your staff is ready for. We can't just go full board ahead and think it's going to go well. So we went slow to go fast, but ended up being a lot faster than we thought. Looking back at it, I think we'll need to adjust that goal to keep working towards it. But we are technically speaking ahead of the game in terms of where we should be at for PBIS right now.
Thank you. So I know we've got some significant reorganization taking place, obviously, next year, right? So if a school building has been doing PBIS for 3 or 4 or 5 years, would we expect that number to be at 100%?
That's the ultimate goal. 100% is very lofty. I would say 80% fidelity, kind of like assessments, is where we're at. I know Jefferson has been doing PBIS the longest. I don't have Nick's data in front of me or Jefferson's data, but ultimately the goal would be to increase as close to 100% as possible, but that's implementation and then follow through as well. So 100% is lofty, but ultimately that is the goal.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to thank you and Superintendent Benty and others. I think we're changing the course and the narrative around data-driven decision-making. And so I really applaud all of you for your part in that, and Superintendent Benty and whoever else. I don't mean to exclude anybody, but I know I've seen results last year. I've been up at your school last year, met with the two of you ladies last year, met with Superintendent Benty, and you mentioned Elevate, and Elevate isn't just about elevating our successes, but it's also about elevating our information and making sure that people are aware of it and bringing additional focus to it. So once again, thank you.
Anything else, board members?
Mr. Chair, I would just thank you for coming, and it's clear that you have a strong team and you work well together. We don't know how things will go in the future, but I would just say I think we can rely on you to build strong teams wherever you go. You just have that focus. And we need teamwork. We need teamwork throughout our district, in our elementary schools. And it may be harder Some students aren't at the levels where you are, but you can bring your knowledge and your passion for student achievement wherever you go. And we are very fortunate to have you in your experience. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. I've always been as a teacher, or whatever, as a measure of growth. And MCA scores obviously are reflective of how your curriculum is matching up with your student learning, et cetera. But the growth factor and what I see from the data here, we're growing exponentially rapidly. And as far as PBIS, I remember in my day or whatever, and you're doing it right and very, very well. But the key is staff buy-in and staff training. And you've done that well, because back in the day, and I'm not supposed to say that anymore, but back in the day with training and the staff buy-in wasn't always there. And it's to get your staff, and not just teachers, but your paras, your cooks, your custodians, from the top, everyone involved in the building, to get that buy-in to do that well, and you've done it very well. So thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Yeah, I guess you've set the bar quite a bit high now for me to
Yes, you have.
conduct a board meeting, but I'm afraid to give noisemakers to the board a hard enough time getting a motion in a second the way it is. But
This could mean a motion.
So, yes, and as Dr. Robichaud said before, as a teacher in me, I would have everyone set it down and tell you when it's time to pick it up and go from there. But thank you so much for your presentation, and go from there. So let's give them a round of applause.
Mr. Chair, I will just say that when Mrs. Benhart brought this idea to me earlier today, I was a little bit apprehensive, but she said it very much plays into our playbook around we celebrate our successes. I will say there were a few items that I needed to commandeer before they found their way into the boardroom, so.
It's good we don't know some of those things.
So you're the fun police, huh?
I am the fun police, and I will leave it at that.
So moving on to agenda item number 4, and I'm glad I don't have to follow that up right away. They're our student board representative. So being new, once again, I'm going to have you introduce yourself again, and if you have anything to relay us on behalf of the students.
Okay, so I just want to say again, my name is Isa Ali. I really appreciate having this experience and getting to be on the board. As of tonight, I have no report for the board.
As you're entering pretty close to, you're starting to enter the second semester at the high school now, and go from
our second semester, and yeah, it's been a smooth transition thanks to everybody at the high school.
Excellent. Well, we're glad you're here, and we're glad you're a member of our board.
Yeah, thank you.
Other items of information from school board members? Anyone? Dr. Moore, you have something?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, I wanted to mention that I visited with Lincoln Elementary and with Principal Amy Boma. And I said I kind of wanted to see some of what they do for promoting reading and math. And she took me to the SMART room. And SMART stands for Stimulating Maturity Through Accelerated Readiness Training. And according to the principal, it strengthens the neurological brain connections for learning, and I'm really into this brain research. Okay, it builds motor skills and core strengths, among other things. And actually, what the students do is they learn through what I would call the kinesthetic movement, and through movement they're learning, and it's also fun for them. And they, crawl and balance and spin. But for instance, they can be bouncing, but then as they bounce, they have to, now this was with the kindergarten, they have to say what the colors are from there up, like red, blue, whatever it is, or they can say the words, but they have to start at the bottom and go up. And with each bounce, they have to do that. So it was really, I think they were having fun and learning at the same time. When I was there, it was the kindergarten teacher, Molly Murray, and the Lisa McDonough was the para, and it's really a creative and fun way to learn. And I asked through it because I said, is this just kindergarten? And it's all grade levels, but I got to experience the kindergarten that day. And I really think that's important because we have the different modes of learning, and one of them is the movement, the kinesthetic, and that's what they were doing. And so I just really would, if you get a chance, just visit and ask to see the Smart Room. So shout out to them today.
Any other board member?
Yeah, just to follow up on Dr. Moore's comment, I believe that program was grant funded. So maybe Zach has a little bit more information that he can share about some of these different grant funded programs. So I am, this is my first year as a Rotary Reader, and I've shared a little bit before I have a first grader. It is oftentimes the best hour that I spend during the week. I hope my boss isn't listening. Last week, I did have to just comment, these kids, you know, we just talked about PBIS and these kids walking down the hallway, good morning, good afternoon, eye contact, high fives. It's just really rewarding to see in person. We hear so much negativity around, you know, the internet and stuff, and PBIS is really working for all of our students, but a specific shout out to the Jefferson kiddos.
Anyone else? I have a few things. So on January 9th, board members, I visited Faribault Middle School, and I had a great visit with Dr. Fox and Mr. Armbruster, and then walked around the building and popped my head in there, on my head, but I popped into classrooms, et cetera, see what was going on, and must have been there frequently enough because a lot of the kids actually recognized and remembered me. So I didn't teach, though. I was okay. Noticed quite a few teacher planning groups were doing the common planning time and really investing their time in that. One particular that really impressed me in the industrial arts area where kids were making robots from Legos and electric motors with batteries, et cetera, making them work and actually walk and spin and able to explain everything. I was really impressed. January 15th through the 17th, I attended the MSBA conference at the Convention Center in Minneapolis. On Wednesday evening, I attended a seminar, 2-hour seminar, Exploring AI in Schools, a Balanced Respect. And I didn't come out of there afraid or anything like that. I was very, very, very good is what AI offers districts and school kids for learning opportunities, et cetera. So that was good. On Thursday, I did various roundtables. One roundtable was hot topics at the board table. Another topic was Vision 2030, Minnesota Agriculture for Food, Natural Resource Programs of the Future. I attended the opening session. Our keynote speaker was Mickey Smith Jr., who is an Emmy Award winner. He's a music teacher out of Louisiana, and pretty hard not to be fired up after listening to him, and especially him playing his saxophone. On Thursday also, I attended the luncheon and the recognition award time there as well. And then Friday, I attended roundtable session on school board impact on student achievement. Also went to a workshop on understanding committee roles in school board development. In our closing session, the keynote speaker was Hamish Brewer, who was has been a principal at various very difficult schools in the East Coast, and he rides his skateboard around and connects with kids, whatever, but a really dynamic thing there. So I want to thank the being allowed to go to the MSBA conference was very good, picked up a lot of things, and we'll relay some of those at our retreat on Thursday. So with that, anything else from any other school board members? Superintendent Benty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a lot going on this past month. So we celebrated our ALC winter graduates. I think we had around 10 of those a few weeks ago. So we look forward to what they're able to do in their future. Our Faribault High School Theater Troupe held its 27th annual Children's Theater last week. And our elementary students always get to have the ability to take a field trip up there to watch the play. And of course, they loved it as they always do. Kindergarten registration event that we had last week went very well, and as of right now, we have over 100 kindergartners registered for the fall. Our target number is 200, so we know that those the next 100 will trickle in between now and usually the beginning of August. I had the luxury and the honor of, I got to be a shark on Shark Tank. I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show, but Miss Knutson Griffiths exploring business class, and they were a group of 9th through 12th graders, and they develop a product or a service, and then they pitch it to you, and they have to design it so they're able to show it to you, and then basically tell you how much money they're looking for and how much they're willing to, of their company, they're willing to give to you in exchange for that. There were some really great inventions that they had, and they did a really, really nice job. I was incredibly impressed by the thought that went into it. So, as part of their lesson on U.S. history, 4th graders at Lincoln got to hear from a guest speaker about how the attack on Pearl Harbor affected her and her family. So that was, to be able to have somebody that was there during that time, it was great for them to be able to see that. Our preschool classes have spent the month learning about animals, exploring their habitats, playing games, and learning about animal features and animal behaviors. Miss Peterson's 1st graders have been learning about story elements, so the idea of like plot and characters, far more advanced than when I was in 1st grade, I know that, and they've been reading The Little Red Hen. Roosevelt SOAR Council, who you just heard from, has been busy this month. 4 students shared their ideas with the parent-teacher organization, the PTO, about bringing more student voices to the conversation. Plus, they had their weekly Big Falcon, Little Falcon club, which I believe Dr. Moore was referencing, where the older students help the younger ones read. Right. Our middle school students showcased their talents in the production of Elf Jr. last month. It was hilarious and incredibly heartwarming show, and they did a wonderful job putting that on. This is where we take a commercial break, just so you know. We're looking for 29 more volunteers to join our Reading Partners team. You heard Cassie talk about how it's the best hour of her week, and I couldn't agree more. It's something that is incredibly beneficial to those. So we're looking for 29 more people for 1 hour a week of tutoring an elementary student who could use a little extra help in reading. All right. This ties directly to our district goals around Read Well by 3rd grade. Visit readingpartners.org/volunteer to sign up. Because we would love to get those 29 more people so that we can have more students that get that individual tutoring. Friday, I had the honor of being able to go and celebrate Dolly Parton's birthday with the United Way. They are the one and only organization that we kind of do an all-out fundraiser for. So if you remember, in November, we always do our annual Dolly Parton Imagination Library fundraiser. This year, we raised, I'm trying to think. I think we raised, was it around $6,000 or $7,000 for the fundraiser this year? But the fundraiser in general was over $56,000 by the time I left there Friday night. I'm excited because it not only does every dollar go to students in our community, but it goes to literacy and it goes to putting books in the hands of students, which obviously matches incredibly well with our goals. Next year, it will be here in Faribault. They rotate back and forth every other year. So we're going to be super excited to have as many Faribault people join that as possible. And next year, it'll be Dolly Parton's 80th birthday. So that'll be a big deal. Upcoming events, we have Faribault High School registration for next school year that will be happening on February 6th from 3:30 to 7. Our Faribault Music Department is hosting its 3rd annual mattress fundraiser on Saturday, February 22nd from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you're in need of a mattress, you can go there and get a very good deal. And they would also put quite a bit of money into our music department. And our preschool classes will be celebrating I Love to Read Month by having guest speakers read to their classes. I will once again go down to McKinley and read to them. I let them pick between 2 books that I read. So, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Benty. Next, we'll move on to agenda item 5, public comment. And tonight's public comment, Janet Moline, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for taking me. My name is Janet Moline, and I'm concerned about, well, last time I was here, I gave you graphs on the growth of educational spending at the federal and state level, triple-digit growth. And I want to change your focus or point out a focus. On the scale of liberty and freedom of choice to totalitarianism or dictatorship, this is where we are, right? And when government grows, liberty and individual freedom declines. And our educational system has grown dramatically, like I said, triple digits in the last 20 years. And I mean, maybe that's your plan. Maybe authoritarianism and totalitarianism is your plan. That could be. Then I wish you would publicly announce your intentions so that people could know your plan when they go into the voting booth. While discussing the taxpayer funding of a proposed program, I was told by an elected official that it's not taxpayer money, and it comes from the state. And I just want to remind everybody that every dollar you spend is first taxed away from the person who earned it, regardless of which government agency appropriated it. I gave you a graph of that I hope that maybe I printed out enough of for everybody. And, you know, every dollar that you spend, you take from the family that makes it more difficult for the family to provide for themselves. Last year, you voted down a resolution requiring yourself to read the grant documents before you ask the taxpayer for the money. Instead, you watch a PowerPoint presentation. I think it's like a commercial, prepared for by unelected bureaucrat administrators. Are you aware that you took over $622,000 from people for programs that hire no new teachers and require you to collect and report personal data on its participants? And that in that same agreement, you relinquished your oversight responsibility to a group of unelected bureaucrats? That's the Lowy grant. You spent $575,000 to hire health finders to match students, faculty, and their family with medical services. Most of us would just look at the back of our insurance card. Health finders also collects data on people, and I'm concerned with the extent to which you have given health finders the ability to usurp parental authority over their children's medical choices. You could please address that. Questions I would like you to ask yourself before you are voting to take more taxpayer money. What is the goal? Better education or data collection and control? Who is benefiting? The bureaucracy? Are you growing the bureaucracy or are you educating the students? If the costs were borne entirely by just a few, how many would be enslaved to pay for the new program you think is such a good idea? There are cancellation statements in the agreements that you have signed with the state and federal governments that they can withdraw these funds. And how are you going to deal with that if these funds are withdrawn and if you listen to Trump's presentations?
Ms. Moore, are you about Ms. Moline, are you about finished?
How about one more sentence?
One sentence.
As you know, you have a fiduciary responsibility to be a good steward of the people's money, the money they entrusted to you for the education of their children, which they probably think is reading, writing, and arithmetic. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 6, our consent agenda. Our consent agenda comprises of the minutes from the December 2nd, 2024 and January 6th, 2025 meetings, employment, additional assignments and other, and authorization of payments, transfers, and investment accounts. So can I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda? Thank you, Ms. Steves. Second by Mr. Wolf. No discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Move to agenda item number 7, our District Advisory Committee. No report. I'm just going to place a little discussion here, or a little input right now. Board members, anytime you have a committee meeting, I would expect a report from you on behalf of that committee back to the board, just a little advisory there. So next, agenda item number 8 is our policy committee. I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Moore, or Dr. Moore and Ms. Steves, as far as the minutes, and then I'll go into the first reading.
You can start.
This meeting happened in December. It was a rather quick meeting. All of the members present did come thoroughly prepared, and there was no discussion or dissents on any of the policies discussed.
And, Mr. Chair, I just want to mention for a new member here, we had, I believe, 9 policies that we went through. 3 of them were the review of the policies, and with that, we look at the entire policy. And then we had 6 revisions of policies, and when we have that, we just merely look at the revision. And, yes, you are correct that there was, in fact, Mr. Chair, all of these, the first reading of the policies, I did not find any problems with any of them. Miracles do happen, Mr. Chair. So,
Mr. Chair, how do we celebrate?
Yeah. Hey, where's our...
The noisemakers are away. Order.
Gonna go fast next time, but wait till the next time. We'll see.
Okay.
And I guess that's where I ended.
Okay, thank you. All right. Pick it up from there. So next, agenda item 8B is the first reading of policies. Board members, any questions on any of the policies for first reading?
And I should note that the revisions were just updates to statutes, and I think there was a couple grammar corrections.
Okay. Anything? Anything else, board members? Questions? All right, thank you for the report. We'll move on to agenda item 9, other committees, the Finance Committee. In the board book, you will see the Finance Committee minutes and reports from, I believe it was December 2nd, or our December meeting, which I already reported on the board meeting, I believe in the first part of this month, or in December. So I will go just quickly review the minutes that we had on our January 21st meeting a week ago today, or a week ago tomorrow, I guess. What we did was we approved the Finance Committee schedule for calendar year 2025. We also approved the North Alexander Park Facilities Cooperative Agreement, which we'll be dealing with here in a few minutes. We had the discussion and a presentation of the audit report from Ms. Raisler. Just going to skip through these. Our financial performance, our student counts, currently through the year, we are down 47 students from what we had estimated. Between November and December, we lost around 11 students. Our December comparative financial report, natural gas and electricity were higher in December 2024 than they were in the point the previous year. We're still sitting around $20,000 less than compared to December of 2023. Our medical claims and our self-insured finances are higher this year at this point in time than they were last year, and we're currently $200,000 in expenses over revenue, but we still have a pretty good balance in that account as well. Our December investment report, Ms. Ressler indicated we're doing our best to get interest on any possible revenues coming in. For December, we earned about $90,000 in interest, and our total cash investments accounts, we are steadily hovering around $22 million overall. In our December analytics, Ms. Ressler provided the committee with a 3-year guideline report showing our expenses as compared to budget. as of December for each year of the 3-year time frame. Our general fund is right on track as compared to other years. So with that, that is my report from the Finance Committee. Again, those are not approved minutes, but what we discussed. And Mr. Wolf and Ms. Boudreau, if you have anything else to add, I certainly would take that. You would?
Well stated, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Moore?
Yes,
Dr.
I
Moore,
would just
sorry.
like to make a comment. I noticed that we're moving away from the student counts, to the ADM, and I think that's appropriate. But I still would like to see like a graph of the actual student counts myself too, along with that, just for information.
Thank you. We'll note
So
that.
that's my comment.
We'll note
Thank you.
that. Thank you. Okay. Anything else there? Move on to agenda item 10, other matters, gifts and donations. So we have resolution 25-22. Do we have a motion for approval of resolution 25-22? Gifts and, thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Steves. Resolution 25-22, the donations are as follows. We accept the following gifts and donations from Fourth Avenue United Methodist Church, donated 50 $20 gift cards in handmade stockings with blankets attached to them. They also donated hygiene products and 6 large bags of winter jackets and other winter gear for students. Ameriprise Financial donated coats for kids, estimated value of $100. The Thompson Family Foundation donated $13,000 to Project Able for scholarships in honor of Anna Grunnett. The Music Mart of Faribault donated 7 violins to Faribault Middle School, $200 estimated value for student usage. And the Nest received the following donations. Roger and May Golden, Ameriprise Financial donated $250. Our Savior's Lutheran Church donated $500. Janet Tangren, Ameriprise Financial donated $1,000. Patricia Clark donated $100. Waterville United Methodist Church donated 3 boxes of hygiene products and care kits, brushes, and socks. Discussion.
Mr. Bellingham, I don't have any discussion other than a comment, a big thank you to everybody, and then a question to Mr. Benty. Can you tell us what Project Able is exactly?
Project Able is it's working with our disabled students at, Mr. Pruitt, do you want to help me with this one? It is for. Yes.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Any further discussion?
Thank you to everyone who donated.
Very much so,
Thank you.
yes, thank you. Any further discussion? Ms. Steves, this is a roll call item, so if you would do a roll call, please.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Candace Knutson.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
Thank you. 10B, consider approval of North Alexander Park Facilities Cooperative Agreement. Could I have a motion for approval of the North Alexander Park Facilities Cooperative Agreement, please? Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. And discussion. So my understanding, this was brought forth to, I believe, the Finance Committee at one time, I believe. Am I correct in that? Yes. And we tabled that. We just needed some more clarity. But this is an agreement with Belfield and the Alexander Park softball fields and the facilities there for our use. It's a 20-year agreement, which has been standard, and it just so happened that this is the 20th year coming up for approval of that there. So in the terms and conditions of that agreement are listed in the board book there. Any discussion? Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 10C, consider approval of the superintendent's contract. Could I have a motion for approval of the superintendent's contract, please?
So moved. I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Boudreau, second by Mr. Wolf. Discussion. I'm going to start this discussion off. This agreement, this contract is brought forward on behalf of the Board Negotiations Committee, comprised of Ms. Boudreau, Mr. Wolf, and myself. In negotiating this contract, we met with Ms. Yoakum, our HR, head of HR, and received data information on our salary numbers, on financials, also on language items, and then also she provided us Big Nine comparisons of contracts within Big Nine superintendents. I then met after that meeting, in consultation with Ms. Boudreau and Mr. Wolf, I met with Mr. Benty 3 times, in which we exchanged proposals back and forth and came up with the agreement that is in board book and that we have for you for a 3-year contract beginning on July 1st here of 2025. So, questions, discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just want to say thank you to you and Ms. Boudreau and Ms. Yoakum for all the information. It's a tough job. Mr. Benty, I thank you for your willingness to sign up for another 3 years. I don't know if everybody in this room knows or not, but Albert Lee is looking for a superintendent. Owatonna is looking for a superintendent. Byron's looking for a superintendent, and Caston's looking for a superintendent. All semi-sizable in comparison school districts to us and not very far from us. When we looked at this and we put this together, I think we're in the in this offer, the total package, if you will, and everything is in the middle of the Big Nine. We even then looked at throwing out the top of the Big Nine and the bottom of the Big Nine and still in the middle. So I think it's fair compared to what we see in the Big Nine schools based on all the data that we were able to get. And so once again, Ms. Yoakum, I appreciate you being able to pull that from the other districts around us. And so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. I agree. Ms. Boudreau, do you have anything you'd like?
Well, Mr. Chair, I guess I just want to stress, first of all, thank you for having me on the negotiations committee. It's not an easy one to be on, but in evaluating and looking at salaries, what Superintendent Benty is being paid, he's very much below the Big Nine average and very much below comparatives for Owatonna and Northfield. And he still will be below that with what we're offering. But I want to say there are other things, interests we communicated with Superintendent Benty about, and there are other options too that we looked at. But I just want to say that before we make the vote, Superintendent Benty has demonstrated impressive leadership skills since accepting the position of a superintendent just 3 years ago. Has it been 3 full years? And you learned the ropes. You've been shown to be resourceful and adaptable, a critical and logical thinker, and a problem solver who does the research and communicates pertinent information to this board, as well as your cabinet and staff. Whether you're confronted with a personnel issue, a financial shortfall, student challenge, or a policy concern, Superintendent Benty evaluates the information available to focus on the best solution for the district. This is my personal opinion, not the negotiation committee, but I thank you for being accepting of others. We have a broad spectrum of personalities here, non-judgmental, a great communicator, and a good fit for the district. And I just want to echo the commendations, the recommendations, I should say, of the committee, and I fully support our offer. And I pray you accept it.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Moore?
Yes, I just have, and this is nothing personal or anything, but I'm looking at the contract here, and I think it's a fairly standard contract from what I can see. But we are in tough economic times. And, but I'm looking at Article 6, Section 4, sick leave, excuse me. The superintendent shall earn paid sick leave at the rate of 20 days for each year of service in the employ of the school district, which may be accumulated to a maximum of 260 days. Now, if you look at the 260 days plus the 13 paid holidays and the 25 vacation days, that's 298 days. 260 is actually 71% of a calendar year. 298 is 81% of a calendar year. I would rather see this taken out. That's my personal. Also on, it is, let's see, Article 6, Section 9. Okay, I'm going to read this because I have a question on this one. If the superintendent is unable to perform regular duties because of personal illness or disability and has exhausted all sick leave credit available or has become eligible for long-term disability compensation and has not been suspended or placed on a leave of absence pursuant to MS 1224, and that's supposed to be 12240, I believe, subdivision 12, the superintendent shall upon request be granted a medical leave of absence for up to 1 year in duration. So if, for instance, if something would happen to a superintendent, and like I say, this is nothing personal, I'm just asking this, we would have a leave of absence for 1 year. So, we would obviously would not be without a superintendent for 1 year, so we'd have to fill that position. So would we hire somebody and then would we keep it open for the the person that would be coming back? Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, one, I'm going to refer that to Ms. Yocum, if you want, off the cuff here. But two, I do know that by law, we must have a superintendent
Yes.
in
yes.
place.
And so
That is by law.
How does that work? Because then if we hire one and then the other one comes back, what happens?
I believe that's what she's going to answer. Dr. Robichaud.
You hire somebody as an interim,
The
which
interim.
is the beginning and ending of a contract.
Okay, so would that be difficult to fill that position then? Because somebody say, I'm only going to be here for a year? So that's another question. So, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. It is not uncommon to find interim superintendents. We've had to do it here in the past a few times since I've been here, and we've been successful. We also have 2 or 3 people on staff that are licensed superintendents that we can dedicate them or designate them as being our superintendent for our district if and when our current superintendent needs to be out for a medical leave. So we do have some options if we were to get to that point.
Mr.
Thank
Chair? Oh, I'm
Ms.
sorry, were you done with your question?
No, but you have something else to
When you're
add to
done,
this?
I will ask my question.
Okay,
Different.
I will complete my little.
Sure,
And,
sorry.
okay, this was Article 8, Section 2. It would be allocated, it would be $500 per month or $6,000 per year for the use of a private automobile. Would it be more advantageous for the pay for mileage? I'm just, no, you don't think so?
Actually, the answer is no,
No? Okay.
absolutely not.
I'll take your word for it. I am concerned about the sick leave thing, though, but, and I guess it's just, from my standpoint, we are in tough economic times, and I think we have to, if we start cutting, we're going to have to do from the top more so from the bottom. That's just my philosophy. So thank you. Linda, you can.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Boudreau.
I would like to verify this with Nicole, but that sick leave sounds very similar to what I had as a state employee. And the hours, how many days per year. Maybe you could verify if that is in line with maybe state state program, county programs, et cetera?
Yes, it very much so is. Matter of fact, it's also in line with all of our other employment agreements, that they cap out at 260 days per year, or the duration of the number of days in each employment agreement or contract. Keep in mind that he accrues 20 days a year. It will take him an awful long time to get up to that maximum of 20 days. Excuse me, of 260 days. I don't have a really good mental math calculator, but I'm thinking it's
13 years.
Thank you, 13 years. If he never uses a day between now and then.
I'm just thinking that in the private sector, I don't think this would fly. I think we have to take more responsibility. As I said, from my philosophy is cut more from the top than the bottom. So that's my philosophy, and thank you.
So, I obviously work in the private industry, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, so I used a similar model for all 3 of my maternity leaves. So this is hours that when I take my maternity leave, when I'm home with my family, these are hours that I can take. Same thing with Mr. Benty. If he, God forbid, has some sort of major medical illness, he would be able to utilize this time. This is the right thing to do. This is what is offered, in many public and private institutions. It's also pursuant to the law, which is, your other question or concern about taking the unpaid time off. That is pursuant to law as well.
Yes, and I just want to reiterate, it's nothing personal. It's just from my standpoint, looking at this, and not necessarily Mr. Benty or anyone else. So, thank you.
Any further comments? Dr. Robichaud.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions. Number one is, any provision, any sick leave is really intended to protect the employee from any unforeseen circumstances, so that person does not go into some financial hardship because of circumstances that he or she could not control. So the sick leave is very much necessary for any employee. I'm also suspecting that this contract is somewhat of a boilerplate, that if you go across the state of Minnesota, you're going to find similar contracts, some uniquenesses for Faribault, but the provisions in it are pretty much the same across the state. Developed by MSBA, approved by MASA, and also has been scrutinized extensively by legal individuals to make sure that the contract is meeting all the necessary requirements.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. I just want to say, first of all, that, again, if you were listening when I first started here, that it was a negotiated settlement. I did go in 3 times to meet with Mr. Benty and consulted Ms. Yoakum many times in between, so it was something that, it was a negotiated thing. Second is, I think from day one, even in the interview process for superintendent 3 years ago, Mr. Benty expressed his desire to be in Faribault. And he has set the pathway now, he has set the goals, objectives, whatever, and again, I told him, and I think I can tell anyone, it's lonely at the top. It's difficult. You're leading 500 people here and 3,000 kids to get the best education possible for our kids in our community, et cetera. So it's a difficult thing to do, especially when you're negotiating a contract, because anytime you deal with someone's terms and conditions of employment, it gets personal, or it is personal like that. So anyway, I just want to thank him for cooperating, negotiating in good faith, and with the assistance of Ms. Yoakum and Mr. Wolf and Ms. Boudreau, I think it's a fair and equitable settlement that we're offering here.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to just say one more thing. I want to thank you for your efforts. And I also, one thing I really like about Mr. Benty, and this will be a personal thing, is that if he gets information about something and then there's contrary information, there's no contradictory information, Mr. Benty will, I think, dig and dig until he finds the truth, and I do appreciate that.
Very good. Okay, so we have a motion And a second for approval of the superintendent's contract. Discussion is completed. Thank you, Ms. Yocum, by the way. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 6-1. Item 10D, reorganization update. Mr. Benty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a few pieces here to kind of keep the board updated. So we've been working diligently on kind of all the nuts and bolts behind the scenes of what has to go into the reorganization process. Principals, along with cabinet members, along with FEA, have been working very in-depth into a lot of these pieces. So we do have an FEA agreement that is going to be talked about with their members on, I believe it's Wednesday of this week. So we're excited about that, which will then allow us to move forward in getting our teachers reassigned across the district so that everyone has a place to call their own for next school year. We're also working and we're zeroing in on what our boundaries are going to be with the transportation department. We're taking we're taking a lot of care into not only what is good for next year, but where do we draw that boundary that is good for years after that as well? So the last thing we want to do is draw a boundary and then have to change it in a couple years. I will say that Faribault is very unique in the sense that we have a lot of housing in the way of apartment buildings that is going to be opening up or is that planned to be built in the next couple years. So we're doing the best we can to take that into account as well so that we don't get surprised by an influx of students in one school and not in another. So I will continue to update the board. I am updating the district as well with emails periodically around questions that I get, and we should have quite a bit more information in the next week or so here.
Thank you, Mr. Benty. Agenda item number 11, dates to remember. January 30th, this Thursday, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, board retreat. February 3rd, 5:30 p.m. is the work session, a week from today. February 4th at 3:45 is policy committee meeting. February 10th at 7:30 a.m. finance committee meeting. And February 18th at 5:30 p.m. a business meeting. If I remember right, is that a Tuesday because of President's Day?
I believe that's a Tuesday after President's Day.
Yes,
that's
correct. Okay. So that. Agenda item number 12 is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
And a second by, motion by Ms. Boudreau, second by Ms. Knutson. Discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
I'm glad you clarified because I would have been coming in at the late